Good evening and welcome to today's edition, that's Tuesday's edition of Atlantic Television Press Roundtable here in the Garden City. Well, you know, when you see Press Roundtable, then you know that it's a gathering of media professionals, those in the media industry who come here, especially journalists, broadcast journalists, print journalists, and what have you. They come here to give insight and perspective to different stories that are trending in the last 24 hours. Today's not going to be different. Let's look at some of the headlines. President Tinubu unfolds 3-year economic revival plan. Cameroon dam flooding is imminent in 7 days. Corporate stakeholders disagree over 238 billion naira. And National Housing Fund, Wiki plans reintroduction of environmental sanitation in the FCT. More than 100 gay suspects arrested in Delta. FCT is undecided on 5 billion naira palliative utilization. Wiki. Niger Delta women urge Tinubu to publish NDDC report. Well, I have a very brilliant guest here in the studio this evening. I'm not going to let it out until we come back from the break, so stay tuned. After the break, you'll get your guest. But remember, you're watching us live on our social media platforms, ATN Live on YouTube and Facebook, Atlantic Television Network, and more. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. But don't forget, it is Atlantic Television Press Roundtable here in the Garden City of Port Harcourt. Stay tuned. You're welcome back. It is still Atlantic Television Press Roundtable. And I have here with me the brilliant, exquisite, very versatile journalist here in the studio. I'm talking about the National Vice Chairman of Nigerian Union of Journalists, Zone F, right? You're welcome.
It's a pleasure.
In the studio with me.
Thank you.
I enjoy your warm handshake. All right, let's look at the details of some of the stories. The Federal Executive Council has unveiled a 3-year economic revival plan to address the social and economic challenges affecting Nigeria. Addressing the ministers during the Executive Council meeting in Abuja, the president admonished them to achieve the first phase of his administration's 8-point agenda within 3 years. He asked the members of his cabinet to work hard to revive the country's economy, because Nigeria is in a difficult time. The president said the ministers have the capacity to make a difference in the ministries they have been assigned to oversee. Unquote, he said, we shall evolve a homegrown re-engineering of our finances, a reimagined stewardship of our resources, and we will let the economy work for the people of this country. Unquote. That's the president talking tough.
Well, it's a pleasure for me. It's good to hear. It's good to hear, but it's better to actually see. You ask me as an individual. I still have the attitude of let's just keep our fingers crossed. Let's keep our fingers crossed and watch.
But taking the first step. Making pronouncement.
No, the first step, if you're talking about the first This is not even the first step.
Okay.
The first step, of course, he has realized it's a very faulty one. And that was very, very wrong. And
you're talking about with the cabinet.
It has really plunged us into very deep economic crisis in the country already. So at this moment, after taking us to the abyss, you are now telling us how you want to take us out. It's okay. Nigerians, as it stands now, it appears like there is nowhere else to go. We are resigned to fate, as it were. And then we can only hope that things get better.
Is it totally hopeless?
That's why we're hoping now.
8-point agenda, I hope we see them in detail.
I'm not sure that... See, I would have loved a situation where all of this would have taken... We have done it systematically.
I say in 3 years, it must be, the first phase must be realized.
Yeah, you don't get... I don't have a problem with the whether many points agenda. It doesn't matter to me. Nigeria, we have seen a lot of agendas.
You sound very pessimistic.
Except you're not in this country. If you have been here and you have been enjoying what has happened in the last how many years, there were 16 years. After 16 years, we had another 8 years. And that plunged us deeper and deeper into terrible times. And then here, we are now, as it were, at the very rock bottom. I don't know whether we'll go below this.
Well, coming out of the drum, coming out of the woods, can only be made possible by a Nigerian. And this is a Nigerian making promises.
Yes, but the spirits are low.
Okay.
The spirits are low.
Were you expecting a Deus ex machina to drop from heaven to salvage us?
No, what I mean is, if only all of this were coming without the first faulty step that actually deepened or made the crisis worse, or matters worse, fine, one would have, of course, at every time, only hope keeps us alive. So at every time there's a change of government, there's a change of leadership, I mean, there's usually this hope that things are going to get better. But when somebody steps on the podium and then the very first thing that you hear takes you back how many years, I mean, destroys everything that you were probably hoping for. I mean, it doesn't give you any confidence at any point in time to begin to say, oh, things will now get better. After you have destroyed me, what else? So, but when you don't have anything else to do or anything else to say, well, you just say, okay.
Is it repairable? Is it irreparable? Now, we've looked at
of course
some of the steps he took. They seem to be very faulty. For example, the central bank reform, the fiscal or financial reforms, they talked about removing the parallel market, and we're not seeing any removal. Does that inform? Is that a background that seems to inform this pessimism that you're expressing this evening? Apart from the fuel subsidy removal, I recall Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala, Dr. Mrs. Okonjo-Iweala, came to Nigeria to applaud the president. Yes,
did she?
She did. She applauded the president. She talked about the fuel subsidy removal, that it will only take Nigeria back a little bit. It was some level of sacrifice that Nigerians have to make, and that she was already seeing signs of a rebate if Nigerians could endure the punishment, as it were, from some of these pronouncements. Now, the president had made further steps and had taken certain actions. We've seen the slow pace of his activities in terms of selection of ministers, and now he has. And the whole, will I say, controversy surrounding the ministerial appointments, some being seen as U-coppers and all that. And these are the same ministers he's telling. Don't make it laugh. So all this put together, I hope, don't seem to drive you to this extreme pessimism.
I'm not sure I'm at the extreme yet, but
because you're totally,
totally
relaxed.
Yeah, it really killed my spirit. I mean, he has not done anything to lift me.
Okay, what are you expecting?
That is me.
Okay, what are you expecting? And you're expecting nothing.
No, like at the moment, for me to begin to expect something.
As a journalist, you set agenda. Can you set an agenda now?
For who?
Set an agenda for what you think the president should have done, which you think he hasn't done, by telling us about his 8-point agenda, telling us about ministers bracing up, for the next 3 years, and what have you?
My worry here is this. It is not just about the president. We should have a National Assembly that will act as a check on the president. Incidentally, that's not even what we are seeing. Because a lot of the faulty things that we're seeing here, ordinarily, if you have an assembly that is worth its salt, some of them could have been detected quite early and dealt with decisively.
For example?
For example, you mentioned the issue of NYSC members serving as ministers. Crying out loud, they went through this entire screening process. And what happened? Take a bow and go. Everybody's a minister. Yeah. So when you have a people who, a setup where it looks like, oh, everything is, they have just, nobody is out there to actually stand up for the people, or nobody is actually there to ask the critical questions, to really stand up to it, say we are here for a purpose, and that purpose is for the benefit of the Nigerian people. If you don't have a situation like that, it doesn't inspire hope. And that's, for me, my own worry. Otherwise, if you have a presidency or you're an executive, and then you have the executive there, the legislature there, you want to, and the legislature is up and doing, the truly representatives of the people, then you don't really have to worry much. But when you find a setup that appears like, everybody is already, I don't know whether to say compromised.
So, what you're trying to say here is that there is a failure ab initio.
That's the way it appears to me.
And that the end is not going to be anything.
No. The end can be anything. I have not foreclosed anything.
Okay.
No. But I say at the moment, my spirit is low, and I will yet want to see before believing.
Okay.
For the ears, yes, these things sound good to the ears.
No, I think by and large, the president has set up his agenda. You cannot achieve anything. No action can be realized without a plan. And every plan must have that sustainable element in it. And these are plans, 8-point agenda, and it's talking about having the plan realized in the first 3 years, and is giving the ministers a charge. That's the most important thing, and it's presidential indeed. Now let's look at the next part of our discussion this evening, and it's still, I hope it doesn't evoke another pessimism again, because that is what we are seeing in this country. The federal government has said that all the frontline states on the path of River Benue may experience flooding within the next 7 days as a result of the opening of Lago Dam in Cameroon. Speaking at a briefing in Abuja held at the instance of the Presidential Committee set up by the President Bola Tinubu, the Minister of Humanitarian Affairs and Poverty Alleviation, Dr. Betty Edu, said the new committee would implement various policies and rescue missions aimed at mitigating the impacts of the flood from Lago Dam. She urged the Nigerian Governors Forum to step up actions by ensuring the immediate evacuation of Nigerians from flood-prone communities to safer destinations. She said, this coordinating meeting is holding at the instance of President Bola Tinubu, who directed such after I raised the issue of flooding in today's Federal Executive Council meeting. Mr. President directed that all relevant ministries must meet to find a solution to the issue of flooding. Now, what baffles me here is that each time we talk about flooding, the first part of action is usually about emergency. Nobody talks about serious mitigation. She uses the word mitigation there. And nobody talks about proactive measure. We're always talking about emergency. NEMA was the first to be informed. And of course, you know the story behind the dam. I hear they have started building the alternate dam in Adamawa that was proposed as far back as 1977. And up till now, That dam was supposed to collect all the excess water from the Cameroonian dam. And Cameroon actually consulted Nigeria. There was a mixed commission, as it were. And that mixed commission recommended Nigeria must have a composite dam on its side that will collect any water coming from that excess dam. And that will help, irrigate farms and all that. The issue of a backlash of overflooding of the Benue, splashing into Niger and coming down on its wake, flooding communities and all that, wouldn't have arisen. But today, all we hear is go to higher grounds. All we hear is every ministry should be alert and mitigate. What's your take, my brother?
See, that's the situation that we'll find ourselves. There are natural disasters. In the face of natural disasters, yes, man is helpless. You can only run helter-skelter when it strikes, and then you are... we're not talking about wildfire here. We're not talking about volcanic eruptions here. We're not talking even hurricanes now. As long as it's predictable, there is a way countries, developed countries, take care of these issues. We're talking about this kind of flooding. This is not a natural disaster. As it were. It's controlled. You know when it's coming. You know when we're going to release. These things we already know beforehand. The question is, why do we suffer so much? It is not as if, yes, we won't see the consequences, but then, why is it that from year to year we have suffered the much that we suffer in this country over matters that are controlled? So, you wonder, now they're talking about 7 days and this is an emergency, everybody should run helter-skelter and all that. And then, this is not something that just arose. It's even planned. I don't know, and maybe, and yet we have government from year to year and all of that. So what do you want me, an ordinary citizen, to, why would I not sound the way I sound? Why would Nigerians not feel the way they feel?
Journalists don't sound the way you sound.
I don't.
Journalists set agenda. They talk about what is wrong and then say what should be done.
We have seen what is wrong over and over, and it is still happening. So what do you want me to tell government now? The government knows far better than even I do. So let the government of the day rise up to it. Not just government of today. You will see, now the flood is coming, they will shout and everything, and they will do the palliative, move them or not. And then after this period, what happens? Everybody goes to sleep.
Exactly.
Until
yes. And there are two kinds of flood. Nimet had predicted flood as a result of the forthcoming rainfall. And we have that coming.
Yes.
Then plus this dam issue, we're going to have a monumental challenge in our hands. And I was listening to one interview, somebody from Ngeni and the Orashi region. I was shouting, they're telling us to go to higher grounds. Where is the higher ground? And I was talking with an Orashi friend who said, the only higher ground you have has to do with Egi area. That appears to be the strong upland that you have in Orashi region. Will everybody move to that Egi area?
If that is what it means to save lives and property, please.
Okay,
what it means is that planning...
IDP camps.
For a long time, you have long-term plan for all of this. These things should be like, oh, is it time now? Is everybody just... leisurely, you just move in, wait for this thing to pass. And because there's nothing you can do about it. When it is natural disaster, there's nothing. Man is helpless before nature. So you just simply do that, and when it's over, you just go back, and life continues. No problem with that.
With hurricanes.
Hurricanes and all that. You get out of the way. Otherwise, it brushes you. There's nothing you can do. You are helpless. But a situation where this one is controlled, we're talking even the rains, now that you can even predict them.
Yeah.
Again, that is something you still have something to do about it.
Okay, now you're talking about Orashi region. Now, they said about how many local governments out of 23? I don't know, they're talking about 13 local governments were affected.
That's in River State. So the question is...
River State. So only 10 local government areas are saved. Port Harcourt, Obiabo, Bonny, the whole of Orashi region, Ikwere, Mo, are all affected. even I hear digging my ears. So what? So where will the rest go? We're talking about higher ground.
When you say local governments affected, it's not as if it's the entire local government. When you mention Degimana, I know some parts of Degimana. It's not the entire.
Exactly.
So the good thing
here, some part of Obia, where there are perennial
the good thing here is we've had technology that has been able to. We're able to predict. We're able to know where this will happen, where it won't happen. So, if for a serious government that actually has the welfare of the people at heart, this is not an issue now. You have planned far ahead.
Exactly.
It shouldn't be an issue. It's a recurrent thing now that you know at certain times this will come. And now you have, you also have an agency that is able to now almost accurately predict and that this will happen. That shouldn't be a problem to government anymore.
Now we've had this urban flooding, which can be solved. Because when you talk about Port Harcourt, for example, even Bonny, you're talking about urban flooding. And over time, we've been talking about the way and manner waste is managed. And that's why the uncollected waste has always been a big challenge in Nigeria. And nobody seems to be doing anything about it. The drains are blocked. You have Riwama that is just there to celebrate waste. And if you go to waste dump, they're just using that to collect money for themselves. We've done a lot of investigation. The media seems to be quiet about what is going on. So when a journalist says there's nothing anybody can do about it, I get worried. What should be done?
I think we need to, as a people, incidentally, we have been so docile. The people have been so dealt with, so much so that some of these things have even been weaponized by our leaders. Poverty has been weaponized so that at any point in time when people can scarcely have the voice to even speak because they are terribly hungry. And then what you give to them is handouts. Otherwise you want to think, now you are going to have a set of leaders. What are the issues do they really talk about? At this present now we have a crop of leaders. Exactly, can you hold them to anything? What did they promise you? What were the issues that they campaigned upon? What did they tell you they were going to do about things like this? Again, our civil society, you're just mentioning media. Media is not the only one. Media is just there to tell you the way things are, and then probably, if you set the agenda and they don't follow the agenda, what are you going to do? You can only set it, and then they are the ones who will execute that agenda. Now, but we need a lot of civil society activism in all of this. And then the people themselves. Of course, civil society activism will also include creating awareness and getting the people to actually do the right things. Yes, in all of this, people have their own roles to play. But then, these are people who scarcely have alternatives. When you say don't block the drains, the question is, what is the alternative? When you say don't do this, there has to be an alternative. I shouldn't throw waste anyhow. Where have you provided for me to put it?
Now on that, let me take you on that. You see, the problem is, we talk about uncollected waste being the major problem we have. The collected ones are sent to the dump. The uncollected ones are the ones that are, purposely dumped by people, recklessly, indiscriminately. And then the ones that are scattered by scavengers, all this can be controlled by public awareness and campaign, can they? I remember when we attended a seminar recently on waste management, a lot of stakeholders complain about poor awareness, poor enforcement. These are two things. The laws are there, nobody's enforcing it. If we have proper enforcement of extant environmental laws or sanitation laws, we'll have these issues. We have issues of uncollected waste littering the waterways, littering the streets. People should bag their waste. Most people bag their waste. And by the time they drop it, you see scavengers opening them up. And the issue of people, of those who regulate, those who are involved in, environmental governance in the state, allowing scavengers to go haywire scattering this thing, instead of letting them stay at the dump site where they ought to be, where they're even making all their money. They still go around the street, littering the street, ripping open the waste. So this is require enforcement and public enlightenment. Don't you think so?
Very well, very well. You see, when sometimes I look at the people who I call as scavengers, I'm even wondering, what kind of life is that? How do we, have you seen them? Do they care about diseases? Are they protected? Do you see how they expose their lives? They're exposed to diseases and all manner of things. Is that the way anybody should live in this country? Is anybody actually thinking about it?
Those who are making money out of them doesn't. Do you know that a waste management expert told us that he had been in charge of a dump site in Rivers State, and that if you arrest one scavenger, 5 minutes will be too long for him to be released. Because if you know the amount of heaps of materials that they take away in trucks, in trailer loads out of this state, you will know that they are sponsored by a cartel. And they go right to the north, they go to Lagos, they go to Aba, they go to Onitsha, where recycling plants are there for them to patronize. So they hire them. And like you said, they don't care about their lives. They hire them. And I hear that some of them even pay money to do that job.
You talk about recycling plants elsewhere. So
we don't have them in Rivers State.
If you have,
so we don't have investors.
If you say there is this kind of gold mine here, then why? What is government doing?
Exactly. So that's the point. That's the problem. We've talked about this over and over, and we will not stop talking about it because it's a major problem that's contributing to flooding, especially urban flooding. If you talk about natural disaster in Orashi region and all that, this part is not natural. It's man-made. Okay, because we fail to provide appropriate drains, and where they are blocked, and all that. So let's look at the next story so that we can go and break. Oh, already half hour, but let's take the story. Stakeholders disagree over 238 billion naira National Housing Fund. The group head of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, Mrs. Timan Elayo, has countered claims made by the NLC President Joe Ajero, who told an investigative hearing organized by an ad hoc committee of the House of Representatives that administrative bottlenecks in the process of assessing mortgage scheme had created room for corruption in the system. The NHF is an offshoot of NHR Act of 1992, which mandates all employers in both the private and public sectors to make monthly remittances to the fund. It is an initiative of the federal government aimed at mobilization of funds for the provision of affordable residential houses for Nigerians. The disagreement between the labor union and the nation's apex mortgage institutions stemmed from recent threats by the former that it will pull out of the contributory funds, owing to his dissatisfaction regarding how the fund was being managed. This is a very big issue. We'll talk more about it when we come back, because I'm sure that you know the problem because you're a contributor. I also contributed while I was in service, and I know what has happened. Recently, I saw some show to give an impression that something was being done in that direction. We'll go on a short break. When we come back, we'll take that story in detail. Don't go away. Yeah, welcome back. I still have a Pakabo here in the studio. And he is of NUJ. Of course, NUJ is an affiliate of NLC. Ajero is threatening to pull out of the National Housing Fund. I'm sure you know what obtains there.
Truly, it appears like the average Nigerian worker is just being used by a few persons, enriching themselves and feeding fat on the poor workers, as it were. Because whatever they promise is not what they're delivering. The so-called Federal Mortgage Bank and whatever they do, I mean, ordinarily one expects that. In fact, just yesterday, my own brother was telling me about our friend who relocated to the UK only a few years ago. I'm not sure it's more than 5 years. As we speak, he has his own house now. He's paying his mortgage, but he's living in his own house. And that is less than 10 years. And here, somebody will work for
35 years.
35
you contribute.
And then at the end of the day, you don't see nothing.
Nothing.
It's painful. It's painful. So what kind of, I mean, even the kind of things that we used to see before, where government, again, not outside of this NHS or NHF, sorry, sometimes state governments do their own thing and do their bidding. We used to see some of those activities. Yeah. Even that is gone. Only God knows.
I even hear that. I was talking with the mortgage bank, Federal Mortgage Bank. He said River State government did not cooperate with them, but that seems to be a lie.
Whether it's a lie or true, how would we know? But the truth of the matter is that any activity, there's been near absence, total absence of activities around that regard.
Exactly.
And it's so unfortunate. If all the while you work all through your life and everything, that you can't even gather anything to say, this is what you buy, 10 bags of cement or so. And then it is done. It's painful. And but this is money that people have been collecting and doing business with.
That's as well. Ajero was talking about corruption and bottlenecks.
That is the truth.
And I is talking even from a client, some clients where this is worked to some extent. I envy my friends in Abuja. I visit my friend, a level 10 to 12 officer, has a 3-bedroom flat.
That is it.
But here in the south, what works up north doesn't seem to work here. That's my problem. Even some people in Lagos can strike their chest and tell you this was what I got from NHF. But here, Federal Mortgage Bank is just there in a very prominent building, and nothing is done. I don't know what's happening at Iriebe now, whether they are waking up. I saw people being given keys, about 100 and something housing units and all that. And the NHF man was saying that River State government has provided a lot of land, and they have a lot of land. They will go back to government and all that. And I was asking, where have they been? Is it because I left some of us less service or what?
Oh,
you know?
Honestly.
So I think that there's some kind of bottleneck in the whole process. There's corruption in the whole process too.
Corruption, of course, everywhere, every facet of our life. And then, for me, everything boils down to the responsibility of government. Government taking responsibility. Say, look, we are responsible to these people. If you cannot even provide for your own workers, how will the average man on the street now have hope that something will come? What is the life of the average civil servant?
Look at the amount of money, 238 billion.
And this money is there, and then they are trading with it and feeding fat on the blood of the people. At the end of the day, they go home empty-handed. It is unfortunate. If we have a government that is responsible, all of this won't happen, honestly.
Well, it's one of those strange stories. Like today has to do with a lot of pessimism because they're all there in the news. A lot of things that are not really
painful. All we're saying is that let government rise up and do what it ought to do. Take responsibility for the lives, of the people, and then do what is right.
We should reinvent ourselves.
That's all.
Now, the Minister of Federal Capital Territory, Nyesom Wike, has said his administration plans to reintroduce monthly sanitation as part of strategies to keep the city of Abuja clean. The minister revealed this to pressmen on Monday night, following a closed-door meeting with contractors handling different projects in the FCT. He said he had already briefed President Bola Tinubu on the idea that at least 2 Saturdays in a month will be declared for sanitation from 7 to 10 a.m. He further explained that the move would enable companies supporting the FCT with logistics to go to the markets and other public places to evacuate refuse, adding that for Abuja to be clean, everybody has to cooperate. Yeah.
Monthly environmental sanitation, and this is 2 times a month.
Twice a month, yes.
I think that's really huge.
7 to 10 every Saturday.
3 hours, 3 man-hours lost that's about 6 hours.
A month. It's not too big.
It will sound like not too big, but then I think it will help. But it hasn't got to be something that should happen ad infinitum. That's like open-ended thing. It should happen over a period of time, and then these things don't happen elsewhere. Waste management, waste collection, whatever, everything about it is something that should be so streamlined that it happens it just runs, because people will be in charge of it. You know when to, how to bag your waste, you know where to drop it. People don't have a time to pick it and all that. People can generally begin to clean.
But now
that it has piled up, as it were, that's why I say for me, yes, at this point, I think it is only good to start it, but then give it a time frame. Because for a city like Abuja, we should be talking about modern cities. We should be comparing ourselves with what happens elsewhere.
Yeah.
So we cannot just come here in Abuja, the very, center of it all in Nigeria, and then people will come in from the world and then see that for 3 hours in a particular day you shut down every place. I don't know what that would mean. If it would mean the way we run it here, then I'm sure that would be terrible. Because you know what Abuja is. You have all the diplomatic missions there. You have everybody. The eye on the world is there. It's not as if it is not here.
Community.
It's not as if it's not here, but then that is what represents Nigeria, as it were. So, and people will be asking themselves, in what other mega city in the world that people just shut down for 3 hours for doing what? Just something that they ought to be doing as part of their daily lives routine. You know, shut down. Then, so what the details is not here as to whether it will involve restriction of movement.
That's what it means.
Then it will now go to shutting down businesses and everything.
I think that the essence is to create awareness. I remember those days when we used to have sanitation days in Port Harcourt, just to create that awareness so that you know that you need to clean your environment. I think that the most appropriate thing is to reintroduce the sanitation officers of old who work every day. But that's not even enough. The sanitation officers are not enough. I remember attending a waste management program, and they were talking about health officers from Ministry of Environment. And one of the issues that came out of that meeting was that these officers are not enough. They are just the same way we have not enough police. And how many people are actually there? Only a few of them wear those beautiful uniforms. And they parade the streets of Port Harcourt. They get compromised from time to time. But the sanitation officers of old were dreaded. You needed to see them, and you needed to see people running, because they clamp down on you, arrest you, and the mobile court are there to try you. So if we have a proper environmental health policing with environmental courts, some of these problems will stop. We may not even need daily, monthly sanitation program. But for Abuja, what Governor Wike is seeing, like you say, is a stopgap measure, and some kind of awareness program, so that people will now realize the need to clean up the city, and those who don't comply will be sent to sanitation court. That will raise awareness and galvanize the people into making the place a clean place. Abuja is also suffering from flooding.
Of course.
Serious flooding, and that's why the governor was even talking about, former governor was talking about removing some buildings that are occupying rights of ways, illegal construction of houses and all that. Well, I think people are quarreling with the way and manner he said it. But He was simply saying the obvious because...
truly, yes. But the truth of the matter is that Abuja has this plan.
Yes, and the plan has to be implemented.
So if you're implementing the plan, I'm not sure so many people will have issues with that, implementing the plan.
But already it has been identified that some people had issues with that. In 2002, more than 6,000 houses were said to have been constructed illegally where they ought not to be. So it's an example of people abusing the master plan. And some of them cause flooding.
One, you see, like this sanitation thing. One thing is to say we're going to do environmental sanitation. Another thing is also to ensure that people truly engage in it. And then at the end of the day, you are able to see value for what
just as before, when we used to declare environmental sanitation days, you see children playing football.
You know, over time, it became something, I mean, people just
playing football,
lazy around and then
indoors, it becomes another holiday.
So,
so let's take what may look like the last story, but I'm not sure it's going to be. The Delta State Police Command has arrested over 100 gay suspects carrying out a gay wedding ceremony in a hotel in Delta State. The state police said it will parade the suspects shortly. Since signing the anti-gay law in 2014, people believed to be homosexuals have been arrested and paraded by security operatives. The anti-gay law of 2014 stipulates a 14-year prison term for anyone convicted of having sex with members of the same sex. Oh, my Lord. So you can see what is going on. I remember a case in Kenya, a very, very funny one, where a gay couple that held some gay ceremonies were arrested, convicted, sent to prison, life imprisonment, and the judge made a pronouncement. Until they make themselves pregnant and give birth, they will never come out of that place. So, generally speaking, my brother, look at that. More than 100 gay suspects arrested. You see, we begin to ask ourselves, what kind of community, what kind of society are we living in? Are we going to swallow everything that comes with the so-called civilization or so-called modernism as Nigerians, as Africans? Are we supposed to be copying things that are wrong? Or copy, for example, copy technology, for example. Copy productivity, for example, productive life. Copy intellectual activity, intellectualism. Copy visionary lifestyle. Copy creativity. Copy innovativeness. These are things we should copy as a people, as signs of civilization. But copying bizarre and very awkward character, way of doing things, way of doing things and way of life is something I don't understand as a Nigerian.
Right, this leaves me speechless. I'm really speechless. I'm really dumbfounded by this. I don't really understand how our society has come this low.
Go this way, yeah.
I cannot imagine. I refuse to accept that this is part of civilization. What kind of civilization?
Modernism. Let's say modernism.
What modern? What are you modernizing? Recreating yourself? And even when you are recreating yourself, you're not even able to do it. Are you able to make a woman a man?
Or make a woman?
Or make a man a woman? It's not possible. So how do we now... I'm just wondering what is working in the heads of these persons. And even if whatever you think you say you feel, how you feel, that you have the effrontery to bring it out, to come out in the open, just to corrupt others. It's unfortunate. But this is how far, this is how terrible now our society is being destroyed by all the openness that comes with this age. Talking about the access to the internet where everything and anything is there. You just access yourself. It's free world, as it were. Therefore, you can afford to let yourself loose and let yourself
One
go.
thing I'm very, very happy about is the fact that African nations seem to have called off the bluff of America. You recall when some of these anti-gay laws were being made, the American government protested, threatened they were not going to give aid to some African countries. And then in Nigeria, at national level, we don't seem to see any legislation. But at state level, at the sub-national level, we are beginning to see legislations that seem to deter people. Lagos State has it. Remember, Lagos has a series of arrests. I've not seen that.
I know.
Any law in River State.
Because when you talk about this 2014, I know that time it was an issue. Jonathan was in office.
Exactly.
And it became
an issue. So federal government stopped and sub-national government took over.
At that level, see, I do not know in the first place, why do we want to be like others? The world is what it is because of our differences.
Yeah.
And so if as a people, we say this is who we are, and we decide to keep it, that we have our culture, we have our tradition, we have our ways of life, and this is not part of it, and we refuse to accept it, I think every other person should let us be. So because if you check all these ones now, the ones that I'm seeing on this one, just check now. They'll be highly connected to the internet. You will see a lot of groups there. They go to various sites where they encourage these things and sometimes even sponsor them. Have a lot of sponsorship from outside. So I don't know. We need to insist and we need to put our feet down as a people. And I would say kudos to whatever is happening in Delta State. If the Delta State government puts its feet down to say this is not us and we will not allow it, I think every other state, every other government, if the Nigerian government has a responsibility to put its feet down to say this we will not allow.
This will not allow.
We will not allow.
No matter what the superpowers
it doesn't matter. Because you cannot, recreate us.
Yes.
This is who we are.
Well,
we are Africans.
Well, the last story in 2 minutes, Governor Wike says he's undecided what to do with the 5 billion naira palliative. Then when he made up his mind, when he seemed to have made up his mind in public, he told them that he was going to use for transportation and all that. There's no palliative about rice and gari.
My dear.
That's the way to go, right?
For me, it is demeaning to go and give a local government area 100 bags of rice and say it's palliative.
Exactly.
For crying out loud. Exactly. Why do we so look down on the poor this much? Why do we denigrate them this much? As a government, why? 5,000 naira for the entire Abuja people, 5 billion. Even if you were to share it one by, how much will the person take? So that would take the person for how long?
So I think the minister was right to say we'll use it for transportation.
Of course, if you are using it for transportation, buy it and then ensure that flood the Abuja with whatever this can afford, and then ensure that the price is low for people.
And then there was a revelation in that story was that it is yet to be paid. He said when they pay, which means the speculations have in various states that the money had come and they are working the money. Doesn't seem to be right.
I even heard in Bayelsa here they broken some.
You know the story of the palliative in Bayelsa?
And then
it's funny because
it expired.
These were palliatives that were doing maybe COVID-19 or flooding palliative.
To ourselves.
I think that it's a mad world. It's a mad world. What's your last shot? Let's close.
Well, we would not stop talking to our politicians, our government, to have, how would you say it now? Let us breathe.
Okay, let us breathe. Let the poor breathe. Well, that's the much we can take on today's program, Atlantic Television Press Roundtable. Of course, you're watching us on our social media platforms right there on the screen. Thank you very much. That's the much we can take. And coming up next is the global roundup. I'm sure you listen to our page. We've already said that. And, well, Global News comes up at 9 p.m. Like we always say, peace and unity are the pathways to progress. Make peace your watchword. Watch us always on live on this frequency on the various social media platforms, 7 to 8, every day, Monday to Friday. My name is Bon Woke. Stay tuned for that program.